Derivatives trading involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results.
So stressful when the world's on fire. Good God. We can't look at this, guys. Like, my strategy is you buy it and you hope that you got a good spot. Yeah, but we all think you're crazy. You don't fight this. No way. The markets are freaking out and you don't think that anything is wrong? Come back tomorrow and I'll lose it all. Should be fun.
All right, guys. Well, it is Thursday, and man, yesterday, late into the afternoon, big sell-off on Wall Street. And so normally I would be like, you know, trying to go on vacation early here. I don't have to work the day job today, but this market probably is going to continue to be relatively active into the Christmas weekend because of the crazy action we saw yesterday. So, what was driving it? What's going on? Let's go take a look and try and sort this puzzle out. We need to go to the charts, not the camera. All right, so here in ZN, early in the day, they were selling off, and I got a lot of reports that, you know, the yield for the 20-year wasn't high enough, and that people kind of were able to sniff that out, and that was maybe what led to some of the selling in here. Of course, there was also the economic news kind of pushed it. Oh, you know what? I am like way late. Hold on. So stupid. Seth, so stupid. Well, U.S. initial jobless claims, 200 or expectation 250, actual 205. GDP quarter over quarter in line with expectations at 5.2%. Philly Fed Business Index negative 10.5 versus an expected negative 3. Well, that was a lot of volatility over numbers that don't seem like too big of a deal. But it does look like maybe the initial jobless claims are pulling the treasuries down. Anyways, back to the chart here if I can. Going into the auction, we started to see bid. Then later in the day, we started to see the S&P 500 just absolutely tank. And the treasuries did see some bidding off of that. So it turned into a complete risk-off move. Here you can see in oil, they sold here in the past day. Gold and silver are kind of flat. Copper kind of, not really doing anything too interesting. The Japanese yen has been bid up. There is a Bank of Japan decision, I think, coming up. You can see the dollar, though, falling to 101.5. That has been in the overnight, though, hasn't it? Hold on a second. Yeah, that was in the overnight. So the dollar didn't really move with this, the rest of this. Bitcoin actually edging a little bit higher. Interesting. The treasuries spiked like hardcore there, but then in the end didn't really do anything. Did I read this right? GDP quarter over quarter final 4.9 versus 5.2. Core PCE prices final 2 versus 2.3. I can't completely explain their reaction to the news, but it may all just be, you know, noise. So, looking into why did we have the moves that we did yesterday? Well, we did get some reports that there was some very large 0-day to expiration options that went off yesterday. There was one transaction in particular that really seemed to front run the whole thing. There was also some big butterfly trades that were kind of expecting the market to move down from here. And because gamma has been reset and everything, the market has become very, very sensitive. So basically what I'm saying is, and I apologize, I'm a little taken back because I thought I was earlier than I was. I thought I had more time before the news. I'm sorry. What I'm saying is the market is very sensitive here, and that the move that we got yesterday appears to be endogenous, which is they were not reacting to anything outside of the market. It was just traders trading. So with that in mind, you might see a strong rally here in the S&P 500 today to try and chase, catch that back. We are seeing a rally here in the S&P 500 as the dollar plunges, touching 101.5 there, and the treasuries are rallying back up. Well, I'm glad I'm not taking any trades right now, because that's pretty violent back and forth there, and the treasury isn't it. You make her lose money real quick on that. Some big orders moving around too. Dude, okay, this the Colorado decision. It's so weird because I feel so disconnected from the politics these days. Like, everybody's freaking out, hair on fire. Everyone's talking about, there's so many comments on the posts about this stuff and everything. I just don't care. I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter in the end. I think that the Supreme Court will overrule it. I think that Colorado's not in play anyways, but people are so upset. And the headline from the Babylon Bee was, Colorado saves democracy by not allowing people to vote for preferred candidate. Hey, well, they're holding a bit above 113 even. I can't trade this. I don't understand why. Is the GDP news that big of a deal? Price index 3.3 versus 3.6. I guess that does matter. But does it justify, like, it, trend up day sort of a thing? Because the way that it's trading right now is like, yeah, we're going to trend up all day. Woohoo! And I'm still kind of like, aren't interest rates a little too low? I'm gonna, I want to be able to see things over here in ZF a little bit better. So I'm gonna get rid of that delta price. Wow. Okay. r/investing has a thread about why did the market sell off. So you know that it was a bad one, right? And they're just like, oh, it was overvalued. No, it was probably endogenous. There was one headline that might maybe spook people, was that Lindsey Graham was going to introduce a bill for sanctions on China and the potential Taiwan invasion. I don't see that one causing a 1.5% decline. I do think it was largely endogenous. Well, the dollar is definitely moving here. Wait, so what, how? Oh, okay, we got a long ways to go. We're not until to yesterday's levels until we're like at 48.10. Still, that's a pretty good rally in the S&P 500 here this morning. Christmas is around the corner and everyone needs money to buy their kid the G.I. Joe with the Kung Fu grip. Do you guys get weird, obscure videos in your YouTube recommendation videos? No, I don't. I wish I did. How are you getting those? What are you watching, Jiwi, that gives you the weird, obscure videos? Because I don't get that shit. You want to see what I get on YouTube? I'm going to show you my YouTube page. I have like multiple profiles, so like if the ones that show up here aren't really very indicative of what it tends to give me. It tends to show me the critical drinker a lot, which I think is really interesting. I do tend to like his videos though. Not as much as it recommends them to me, like good grief. And you get a lot of videos about guns. Oh, I searched for ADHD stuff because I was interested in what ADHD channels there were and stuff, and what kind of content I could make. But I tell you what, if you're like a subject and you're the top video in the subject, it's like, holy crap. 3.8 million views about why people with ADHD procrastinate. I mean, I could make a video about that. So, okay. Ah, dude, the Lane 8 winter mixtape is out today. Oh, we're totally watching that. Wait, I have another, like here, I have another tab over here of videos that I want to watch, but they're all songs right now. Here's the one I got, a tutorial about how to make 90s techno like Ghost in the Shell. I don't even know what that music sounds like, but it interested me. And turn this, and then I put it over into this bit of tabs right here, right? These I can probably get rid of. Destiny. I've been getting a lot of stuff from Destiny for some reason. I think it's because he's like getting divorced, and I was searching about that because I was interested, but I don't actually care about Destiny. It's just... Oh, this was a story. Okay, I found a story yesterday where they claim that they can predict with 74% accuracy whether a child is autistic from a picture of their retina. I'm a little skeptical, but okay. You're waiting for the best of LGBT. Yeah. Dude, the Lane 8 winter mixtapes are the best because he puts stuff in there. I want to swear and everything because it gets me so excited. He puts so many tracks in there that like you're not going to hear anywhere else again for like 9 months, and then 9 months you're gonna be like, oh, that's where he got that. It's so good. It's so good, and it's a 2 hour 40-minute mixtape, so it's a big mixtape. Good stuff. You like, you know, kind of more melodic, deep house. With one of two kids being autistic, the odds for predictability are pretty good. It's not 1 and 2 kids. This is where like it comes. Okay, so ADHD and autism are very different. You got to understand that. They're related, but they're very different. ADHD has to do with a deficiency of specific neurochemicals in your brain. Okay. Autism, by and large, has more to do with the structures of your brain developing in a different way. So that could be caused by a real deficiency of certain chemicals in your brain. Like, if you get hit with the ADHD stick too much, it makes you autistic. That sort of a thing, right? But autism is kind of more like the structures of the brain are just completely different. Not that there's not some of that in ADHD too, but it's like that's more characteristic of autism, right? So there are a lot of different things that can potentially cause that sort of difference, right? There's a whole category of genetic traits, let's say, that could lead to autism, right? ADHD, it's the same thing. There's multiple genetic traits that can lead to ADHD, but it's like a much narrower field. Like we have it, I think, narrowed down to like 15 different ones or something like that. And a lot of those 15 are actually related. There's really like 3 to 5. Okay. So ADHD, you can kind of do the genetics math with it a little bit more than I think you can with autism, because autism seems to be kind of more this freak combination of stuff that leads to different brain structures. And we have evidence that it is genetic, but I can't do. Whereas with ADHD, with the way that ADHD is, we would expect anywhere from 10 to 25% of the population to have it. So ADHD is and should be far more common than people expect. And so when you see all of these kids being diagnosed with it, and then everybody goes, oh, well, this wasn't the thing when I was a kid. They must be overdiagnosing it. That must be blah, blah. No, it was always there. It was probably always there because, again, it's mostly genetic. It's just, it was overlooked. It was passed over. And when we look at it and we look at the genetics and everything, we realize it's far more prevalent than we ever realized. And it's probably underdiagnosed, to be honest with you. It's probably underdiagnosed. Like the number of people that we get diagnosed with ADHD, in my estimation at least, probably less than you would expect to see based on the genetics. More like it was punished. Well, yeah, so this is this is something really interesting about this subject that I think is really useful for traders and people in politics to understand. Okay. Your frontal cortex is a neural network. Just like ChatGPT. It's a collection of neurons that are kind of, all put together there. And then you pass data into that neural network. And as you pass data into that neural network, that's the training data, the neural network reconfigures itself based on that data to find the best way to interpret that data based on your goals. Okay. And so that resulting configuration in your frontal cortex, that's what I call a model, because we call that the configuration of the network a model in computer programming when we're building a neural network. Okay. So that model, one of the cool things about this model, the thing that the human brain can do that the computers really can't, is that it can instantly reconfigure itself. It can come in and it can say, well, I'm in a different culture now. So the context of everything is completely different. And it just adjusts itself based on the situation, right? So that frontal cortex is the part that is damaged in people with ADHD and autism, largely speaking. That's why, okay, if you have autism really, really badly, like my son, delayed speech. Why? Because speech comes from that frontal cortex part of your brain. It's taking everything that people say around you, it's combining it together and creating, learning how to talk. That's also why you get some people that they don't really know what they're talking about, or they don't really know what they want to say, that you get this word salad that comes out. That's basically the neural network is trying to make stuff and it's putting words together, but it doesn't really actually have a good answer for that one. And you get word salad, right? Makes sense. So the thing that I was getting at that is kind of critical to understand is that one of the things that people do is we have like this mirror neurons in there, right? So I can come in and I can say, okay, what if I was this person? Given the current context, based on what I know about their model, how might they react? And so I'm reconfiguring my model to reflect their model as much as possible, and then see how they would respond in order to judge what they're saying to me, right? And so this is why you get these things in autistic people where it's like, autistic person says something, apologizes or something like that, and then the neurotypical person interprets it as, oh, they're being passive aggressive or they're being mean to me, right? Because the autistic person doesn't have the ability to put together that complex network and say, that person that I'm talking to would maybe misconstrue what I'm saying and think that it's mean. So I need to do this and this and this. That would be the inputs that I would need to make this model translate into I'm apologizing, right? So the challenge with an autistic person is like, you just don't have the skill. Your brain that just can't do that thing very well, right? You have to rely on the slower systems and you have to think it through. And it's just, especially in like live conversations, it just can't do it fast enough. So what can you do? Well, you can teach people, right? Because if the person that you're speaking to understands that you're autistic and they have a model in their mind of what an autistic brain is, then they can interpret your actions and how to interact with you correctly. That's why this whole like autistic neurodivergence movement is actually a big deal and an important thing, because there's a lot of people, and some of the most it's complementary, really. We need these people that kind of end up focused on those slower systems. That's a beneficial thing for society. So it's good to help, understand them. But there's this huge barrier here. And why is that? Well, one of the things that people do is they'll go in and they'll say, okay, well, this guy, this is his model, right? But if their model is too different from yours, they have a tendency to dislike you. The reason for this is tribalism. Basically, your instincts say, this guy's model is too different. They're from a different tribe and I should be distrustful of them. That's what happens, right? So if somebody is too different, it leads to distrust and disliking them and so forth. And so this is why you run into all of these sorts of issues in politics and trading and so forth, where it's like, you're trying to explain something to somebody and they just don't like it. It's because their model is just so different. And it's really only when you get into people that are high in openness trait that you don't really get that effect, right? So this is why you get this kind of responses, is like there's a lot of people out there that are neurodivergent, and we would expect there to be a lot of neurodivergence based on what we know about the genetics. But instead of coming in and saying, oh, okay, so let's adjust so that we can be more effective as a society and help those people better, people's knee-jerk response is actually to just dismiss it. And I thought I was just a jerk. Hypothetically, if we got rid of smartphones and all smart devices, would cases of ADHD go down, in your opinion? Yes and no. So I think that if you had absolutely no smartphones, that the prevalence of it being diagnosed probably would go down, because, again, this is all about how do you train a mind, right? So I have ADHD, but I'm a little bit unique compared to most ADHD people that you know, because I've been on medication since I was a little kid. And I had extremely strict parents that were extremely on top of my schoolwork and all of that. So I remember in high school, I'd come home and then it was study until I went to sleep. You know, like I had to develop really good study habits. I had to do things, I had to focus for long periods of time. And so I am now pretty good at, I'll take a medication, go into study mode, and I can study, take these tests for 3 hours, that sort of thing, no problem, right? It's because my brain has been trained, right? And that's how you deal with ADHD. So you take medication because the medication kind of allows you to actually control things. And then once you're on the medication, you have the ability to more effectively train the brain. And once the brain is trained and the neurons are there, then it's not as much of a problem, right? Well, the problem with all of the smartphones and stuff like that is how is that training your brain? It's training your brain to not be very attentive. So people would still be genetically predisposed to it, but without those things, they probably wouldn't have as much of a problem. So there would be a large group of people that do have ADHD, but their models would be a little bit better. They wouldn't have high enough symptoms for them to seek treatment out, essentially. So it probably would result in less diagnoses, yes. But kind of no, right? Because, see, there's this idea or suggestion. So it's really funny when you go into this, because you can kind of see in some of the theories and so forth, these dynamics at work, right? Because again, like, if you're taking all of these inputs and then you're putting it through that machine learning network in the front of your head, and it will come out with an answer. And so I can see where you would get these answers, right? But then when I go back and I go through all the details about everything that I know about that particular subject, right, and think about it logically, then it doesn't make sense, right? Well, I could totally see why somebody would say, well, people have a hard time paying attention. It's because they're on the smartphones, and maybe they're being diagnosed with ADHD because of all the smartphones and the TVs and stuff like that. Well, no, there is like actual chemical processes at work there, but what you do with your time, what media you consume, et cetera, is going to have a large effect on how that genetic trait actually ends up affecting your behavior, right? Which kind of comes to a bigger issue, which is, what are you actually consuming and what kind of effect is it having on your brain? I don't think so. Like, latchkey kids left to their own devices start doing terrible in school, throw piles of pills. Yeah. Well, I mean, it did start to get diagnosed in the 90s, but you got to understand that these kids always had a problem, right? Do you know that like an ADHD female is like two? It's like a ridiculous amount. It's like 2 to 5 times more likely to get pregnant out of wedlock, like or have a teenage pregnancy. Like, it's crazy. In the past, these kids would be people that just dropped out of school or became delinquent or whatever. They are always there, man. They're always there. And I'll give you a freaking example, man. My uncle is ADHD, man, to the max. He's so ADHD. I mean, it's fun talking to him, but there's absolutely no like in a conversation, if we need to get something done, absolutely no focus. He's just going on this subject. You want to talk about this? I want to talk about this. This is great. Fine. It's fun, but you sometimes we're there longer than we should be. is what I say, right? Okay. Well, he was in school before all that happened. He was in school before all of that happened. And so he just really wanted to get out of school as quickly as possible. Basically, barely. In fact, I think he had to go back and get his GED. Basically, didn't finish school. He immediately went into, like, I think that he started out painting cars, did a couple of other things before, he was having problems. And so then my dad came back along and taught him computer stuff. And now he's been a systems administrator at a place for a really long time. He makes really, really good money from it. Okay. But he's had it rough. He's had it rough, in my opinion. And I probably would have been exactly the same if I had not been diagnosed. I can just see it. My dad has it. He was never diagnosed. I can see where it causes the problems. The number of people that have this in the boomers that have this and it wasn't diagnosed, it's crazy. It's crazy, man. This idea that, like, is just kind of like some sort of sociological phenomenon and it's being overprescribed and they're just giving people pills because that's an easy solution. It's total bullshit. If you believe that, understand you have been misinformed severely, okay? It's not medically induced. Let me tell you something, man. ADHD is probably the most studied and well understood psychological condition out there. We understand quite well the actual chemical pathways that are in play here. Okay. It mostly has to do with dopamine and norepinephrine in your frontal lobe. And we don't completely understand why it is that, like, these chemicals are more active here than they are here. And how do you get the medication to be delivered here? We don't understand that particular bit, but we understand the chemicals at play and we understand the genes at play and why that leads to certain things. Like, you have a certain chemical and then you just don't produce enough of these things that build dopamine and norepinephrine, right? Or another problem that people will have is there's these little things inside the cleft that suck the dopamine and norepinephrine back out. Because if they didn't, there'd be too much in there and then that neuron would be constantly firing, and that's how you get schizophrenia, right? But some people have too many of these vacuum tubes. And so they're producing the dopamine, but it just gets sucked back out, right? Like, we understand how it works, right? The medications directly address the chemical deficiency that is at play here. They don't have enough dopamine. It gets dopamine to the places where it's needed so that the brain can function normally. So it is directly affecting the actual problem. It's not perfectly doing that because, how is it going to produce enough of it? And is it going to get it into the right places? That's kind of the issue. Okay. But it works really, really well. Like, medications are so effective for this condition. You have to understand, when you're pushing this idea that, like, it's medically induced and that we're overprescribing, Adderall and Ritalin and stuff, what you're really doing is you're discouraging people from going and seeking the exact treatment that they need. And the result that it's going to have on their lives is going to be the difference between somebody that is a wanderer and struggles through their entire life and is in poverty their entire life, and somebody like me that is at the top end of the middle class income distribution. I cannot stress how harmful it is, that how big of a difference treatment early has in people's lives. It's not overprescribed, man. I mean, maybe there are people that are getting it and they don't need it, but, like, probably beneficial for them as long as they're not, like, abusing the medication, right? It makes such a big difference in your life. I would not be making what I do if I had not gotten treated early. I just don't. One of the reasons that I'm reluctant to go really hard into the ADHD thing, like as an ADHD influencer or whatever, I think part of it is I just don't, I don't want the responsibility of another channel I gotta make content for. But I think that other ADHD people that need the help right now, because really the people that are catching it on YouTube and stuff are the people that they were never diagnosed as a kid and now they're realizing that they have it, right? They don't want to see me because what they will see is what they could have been and missed because they weren't diagnosed. I do it really hard on this channel already. Well, when we're on stream, yeah. Which well, there's a lot of different medications. So like I said, there's like a specific chemical deficiency, but the question is kind of like, how do you get that chemical there in the right amounts and to the right places? And so that's why there's quite a few different ADHD drugs that will all kind of affect it. So like Adderall and Ritalin, the stimulant medications, these stimulants go and tell your brain to produce more of this chemical. And, if the problem that you had was that your brain just doesn't produce enough of the chemical, then that resolves it right then and there, right? But there's, you're getting dopamine here, but you're also getting dopamine here where you don't necessarily need it. Or norepinephrine here where you don't necessarily need it. Like for me, the norepinephrine release subdues the emotional centers of your brain. So I tend to be less emotional and less empathetic than I would normally otherwise be. You notice, especially here on stream, like, I mean, I try to be caring and sensitive, but I'm pretty cold, aren't I? And I'm also pretty, like, always super serious and locked in. As a medication. When I'm not on medication, which is never now, because I'm on a antidepressant style medication, so I'm always on it. But during the period where I didn't have that, people said that I was extremely sensitive. They loved talking to me because I had the ability to like understand and speak with them. And people like a really common experience for me when I was dating without the medication was girls would tell me stuff that they should not be telling you on a first date, right? Like they trusted me more than you would a person. But I was really good at that. That's a trait that that's a family trait. My dad is like that too. But when I'm on the medication, kills it because I'm getting too much dopamine, norepinephrine into the emotional centers of the brain. It looks like the meds did you more harm than good. No. I mean, there are side effects. I bet you that I am an inch shorter. Like, I would probably be 5'10" instead of 5'9". Because my brother, he's almost exactly the same as me. Like, body-wise and everything. But his wrists are bigger. He's an inch taller than me. That's the difference. Yeah, it stunts your growth a tiny bit. Worth it. Stunts your growth a tiny bit. There are side effects. So then you get into different types of medications. So then there's like the antidepressant classes of medications like what I have. And what that does is, if you have too many of those vacuums that clean the dopamine and norepinephrine up, then we just plug those so that it doesn't reuptake that chemical. And then you have more of the chemical available to you, which is basically what I do, which is what I have. And then all of these other different versions of medications are either about how you release the medication, like time releasing it gently, or different chemicals that may potentially affect different gates so that the chemicals get to where we want it to be. Do you think an underdeveloped country would have a better chance if they diagnosed and treat the population? I don't know. Maybe. I have never seen any kind of attempt to quantify the effect that these psychological conditions could have on the economy. I know that it makes a big difference to people's individual lives. It's like I said, like I don't want to pick on an individual creator or anything like that, so I'm just going to speak more generally. But like, when I look at the people that are like ADHD influencers on YouTube, and it's like, oh, you know, I mastered my ADHD and now I'm a big success, right? But then when you go and you look at their life, basically what happened was like they struggled and weren't able to accomplish much of anything. And then they found out they were ADHD and they started making YouTube content about it, and they got rich off of YouTube, right? Compared to me, which was I was diagnosed early and I just excelled everywhere. Seems really egotistical to it, but I guess I'm just egotistical, man. I was thinking, we were talking yesterday because one of the things that happened with my first marriage was that she really, really wanted to have kids, but she had some health problems, and in particular, she was very overweight at the time. So much so that she wasn't going to be able to carry a baby to term. So even though we could have done like in vitro or things like that, you know, her health conditions were preventing it. And there was a couple of times where things happened. I wasn't able to get into a house quite as early as I wanted. There was some costs that came along. Like I remember one time, went to the hospital. They told us it was covered and it wasn't. And so we had to pay a huge hospital bill for that, for instance, right? Like it really held me back. I was like, oh man, if I hadn't have gotten married, probably would be a millionaire. Probably would have started buying houses and would have caught the housing run, right? Same thing with this time. If I hadn't have gotten married, I probably would have continued renting out houses and stuff and maybe would have become a millionaire. I'm not a millionaire yet, but I will be before I die. And I was going to be successful one way or another, right? Like there was multiple opportunities for me to be successful that I missed. And they were just going to keep coming because I work hard and I excel at most things, especially at the beginning. And it's because I kind of get the best of both the ADHD and a neurotypical brain because of having to overcome that. And there's a lot of, I'm just saying, there's a lot of people out there, if they got diagnosed early, would be massively successful in their lives. And they go nowhere because they don't know. Yeah, and because you're lucky enough to have been born in the USA. Yeah. I mean, the thing that's funny about it, I think that this is going to be the case with anything. I think that this is kind of the thing in Squid Game, right? Because in Squid Game, so much of that in the show is completely random, or it was designed to be completely random, right? But it was also the choices that you made, the things that you did, right? And so you couldn't really say it either way, right? It was like there was enough in there to make you think that it was because of the things that you did, but then when you really look at it, you understand that there was randomness to it. So like, it was kind of random that I ended up becoming a site reliability engineer. It was just like, that's what the people that I was working with at the time wanted me to do. And I just went with the flow. But at the same time, I worked hard. I understood what I was doing. I was always trying to understand things better. They pushed me in that direction because of the efforts that I put up. Right? So it was random, but it's not, you know? And I think that that's where Squid Game gets it kind of wrong, because Squid Game is an elimination game. You go in and you make a mistake, then you're done. That's not the way the real world works. That's not the way the real economy works. In the real economy, if something doesn't work, you can try something else. And there are some people that they're going to keep trying until they are successful with something, and it is inevitable that they will eventually find something. That, and I'm sure that that's all of you in here. Like, trading, super, super hard. Most day traders will not make money. That's just kind of the nature of the game. But at some point, I can pretty much guarantee you're going to find a way to take the skills and things that you learned to benefit your life in a substantial way. And that if you keep trying different things, you will have success somewhere, and maybe it will be adjacent, but you will find it. That's why understanding the fat-tailed nature of markets is so important. You can come in and you can fail 100 times, and then you just succeed that one time at the end, and it cancels out everything else. Well, we should probably talk about the market. It's been long enough now, 45 minutes. We are substantially higher, I would say. They seems to be decent support around this 113 even area. There does appear to be a bit of a liquidity hole. There was at 113.01, but it didn't last for very long. We've kind of come back into it, and we are now in the period where we could potentially see further meta orders. So I can kind of see the treasury moving up, kind of saying, hey, we might decide to take off here because it's time. I think they might be bluffing, though. I think they might be bluffing. S&P 500 flagging really hard here. So we'll see what they do on the open. I was kind of thinking coming into today, you know, because of the sell-off that we had, and because we think that it's endogenous, I can almost guarantee you that somebody's going to come in and try and move the market up and try and ignite a retracement of it. But because of that news, we already got that, so I'm not quite sure what the play is from here. Now, to Rodrigo's comment, if I had never met my last ex-wife, my life may have been better. I want to say, you know, like, I do think that from time to time, but I don't think it's actually true for me. I do think that there was some opportunities and things that I screwed up because, you know, I was with her. Like, maybe if I don't know if I would have gotten into the trading without her, but because that happened while I was with her. But, you know, maybe if I wasn't married, I would have moved to New York and I would have had a better chance at becoming a trader for an institution or something like that. That's one thing that I think about a lot. Or, you know, I might have invested some of these sums that I had lost on healthcare and things like that earlier, right? That's another thing that I think about sometimes. Man, with the cost for some of my medications, freaking good grief. If I had saved all that, it'd be hundreds of thousands of dollars now. But I think that at that time, I lacked some very basic people skills that I would not have been able to develop with anybody else. She was a wild person extremely deviously socially intelligent. If she was still around, stream would probably be more popular. Probably would. It's my wife. She's not interested in it at all. She don't watch it. My ex would watch it. She would be like, "Oh, you should do this. You should do this." She'd want to be on it. She liked the attention like that, you know. Would not be the same person without her. So I think in the end, it was a necessary step to get me to where I am today. I had to go learn the things that I did from her, go through the absolutely painful experience of getting divorced and everything, and then finding somebody that I could have like a really secure relationship that gives me the freedom to be able to do all these things and take risks and stuff. It would be really hard to come in and take risks if I was concerned that my wife would be upset about if I won or lost that day, right? If I didn't grow up in a war zone, I'd be much better. Yeah, it is. It is. But that just all reiterates the point that what is this really about? How do you train a mind? All of those experiences are encoded into cells in your brain that all have an effect on how you see the world and the decisions that you make. So then the question becomes, okay, how do you actually harness what we know about that and intentionally train your mind in the direction that you need to go? Well, I don't know if I'm the best at like, there's the study habits that you need and this and that, but one thing that I have found is that the order of things matters. So there, like this happens with kids, where it's like if you introduce sex to kids before they're old enough, it messes with them, because that is such a big, you know, thing in your mind, right? You need to like develop all of these other things first in your sense of self first before it goes into that, or it just consumes you, right? There can be these things where like if you're building your network and the network makes a conclusion that's completely wrong, everything after that is going to be wrong too. And that really hampers the development, right? So it's very, very important that we start with a good, solid foundation. And that's what I'm trying to give you with the videos on the channel. These are the things that like, I think that you have to know before you even start. And then you're going to go out on your own and you're going to discover things on your own. And you're going to be able to interpret and use them correctly and encode those into your brain correctly, because you already have a foundation that's based on empirical evidence. See how it all comes full circle? It's interesting to what degree you credit your success in life to pharmaceuticals. Yes, it is interesting. I mean, I don't think that it's the way that I would describe it is that that was the barrier, right? That removed the barrier. But I can pretty much guarantee I would not be making the money that I do if I had not been diagnosed early. Probably. So it's kind of interesting when you don't get diagnosed with ADHD. Like, where do people tend to go? Even if maybe they're successful, because I mean, you can be successful in spite of it. You absolutely can. But it's kind of interesting the kinds of fields that they tend to go into. I think that you find a lot of ADHD people will go into trades, like become a plumber or an electrician or something like that. Because they tend to enjoy, like, you're going to a different place every day. You're solving a different problem every day, right? Another one that's really common is sales. My dad did sales, right? Well, okay, so if let me put it this way. I never missed a day of high school. I think the lowest grade I ever got was like a B plus in one class. One time. A B plus. Everything else was A's or A minuses. Went to school, right? And by that point I had very, very well established study habits and this and that, right? If I had not been diagnosed, I would not have been able to handle that. I would probably be bored in school, but I wouldn't be able to do the work. I wouldn't have been able to get the grades. So, and at that point, would I have been able to get through? Because I did go through university without the medication, but that was because I'd already built it up. Would I have been able to make it through university? Absolutely not. No way. Because there was days doing computer science, man, or weeks where it was every waking moment until 12 o'clock at night was programming something, because there was a class project in every class, and it was all of my effort. It was not easy. It was so insane. I would not have made it. I would have dropped out. So I wouldn't have had a degree, wouldn't have been able to get hired at a bank like Goldman. It would have been completely different. Would have been completely different. And what would I be doing at that point? I have no clue. I have no clue. Could still be doing something and becoming a high earner. Yeah, but it would have been a lot harder. Would have been a lot less likely. Whereas with the way that things went, it was inevitable that I was going to. But I can just look at the people that don't get diagnosed, man. The effect that it has on the outcomes is insane. That's why it's so frustrating, because I think people are really concerned about, you're putting these kids on meth and yada, yada, yada. Well, I don't think that they realize how beneficial of a difference it can make for those people. Yeah. Well, it's not meth, but they are related compounds and they have similar effects on the brain, right? They're amphetamines. Methamphetamines are just way more potent. Yep. Microdosing kids on meth, hoping they become excessive income tax. But yeah, that's exactly what it is. You know what though? Like, so here's the thing. So I was talking about like, it kind of suppresses the limbic system, the emotional centers of your brain. This is why, for instance, the German army loved it. Right, the German army loved the amphetamines because he'd give the soldiers amphetamines and then they'd just go. They didn't worry about who am I killing or what am I doing. They just did what they needed to do to get it done, right? Well, for me, it was kind of it's a sad thing. It sounds like that's terrible that's been taken away from you, right? But the reality is that I was too emotional. You'll get into a thought process. It's very difficult to get out of it. Once an emotion starts going, it just consumes you. It's too much. It's too much. It's not a normal person. A normal person, you're disappointed about something. You feel bad about it for a few minutes, and then you say, okay, I need to do this. I need to do that. You go into something else. ADHD person, it's just like that. You keep going in the cycle and you can't stop it because the brain goes off on its own. And it's too much. Especially in relationships, man. It was too much. Well, I mean, the thing is, though, is that I have entertained the possibility of this overdiagnosed and overprescribed bullshit. But what I did was I went and I looked at the facts, and then I'm able to show why that particular theory is just has absolutely nothing backing and basically contradicts everything that we know about the science. Well, we are engineering minds. It is. Like I'm straight up telling you, if you think that you're ADHD and you get prescribed Adderall and then you use the Adderall when you trade, you will probably be a better trader. I can say almost with probably 80-90% confidence that it will make you a better trader. Just straight up it does. Prescribing it to people that aren't actually ADHD, though, is probably more detrimental than it is useful. Like, okay, yeah, you take a little bit of it and you're going to perform better. You will. You'll be more focused. You'll perform better. If you're a regular person, but it will, if you're a regular person, you really truly are neurotypical. It will also give you euphoria and you get attached to it. So, whereas a person with ADHD, you don't get that and you're not addicted to it at all. Like, you know, so if you were addicted to it, you would never miss a dose, right? It's hard for me to remember. It really is. No, well, number one, I don't want to go back to the emotional wreck that was before. And number two, I want to perform. I can be, I can get off medications when I'm retired. And then my wife can put up with that and we'll see if she's willing to put up with that. But I do forget to take it all the time, actually. The one thing, though, is the antidepressant style medication. Ooh, that one is like, so there's been situations where I haven't been able to get the medication for like 2 weeks, right? So you kind of come off of it. You don't want to do that. No. Not that like there is like a, I don't know how to describe it. For one thing, no. I'm on an antidepressants. I am on a norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor in addition to a small dose of Adderall, essentially. Okay. The norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor, that's an antidepressant style of medication. The brand name is Strattera. If I don't take the Strattera, the first thing is the taste. So like, basically, you won't have enough adrenaline in your system, and so it tastes weird because you can taste adrenaline, right? So that's usually how I can tell, is because it tastes a certain way. And I can't sleep. Like, what will happen is I will fall asleep, and then I will have dreams of falling, and I'll jolt myself back awake, and I'll do that all night. That's the first thing that happens. And it also kind of makes you feel dead. Like everything is just, doesn't matter what happens. You just feel nothing. You feel dead for a few days. And that really sucks. That's not a good feeling, but it's not a huge deal. But what sucks is then you get the medication again and you get back on it. Feel nauseous for days, and it's titrating on it is the most difficult thing. Most people don't have the what is the word? The self-control, self-sacrifice to tirade onto it. They give up. Most people. But I'm incredibly stubborn, so. What, the Adderall? I tell you what, if all I was on was the Adderall, I bet, yeah, I'd probably forget to take it half the time. But it was kind of nice when, I mean, it hasn't been like this for a long time because the dose that I'm on is pretty small, but when you're on a larger dose and the half-life of it wears off, you kind of get a, what do they call it? A dump afterwards or whatever. But after that dump is done, or let's say it's the weekend and you're not on it, it's kind of a relief because there's like that tension that's gone. You can relax. Was it black on your shirt? It's just the compass pattern on it or something. It's actually pretty slick. But probably doesn't show up on camera very well, does it? Okay, well. I'm not seeing a meta order, but the treasuries are at their highs. Okay, so the thing that's wilding me out about the market right now is that it's Thursday. You know? Like, let's say that we end the week at 375. That I would be like so wilded out by that. That would be really a little scary to me. So I saw this picture the other day. This reminds me, I wish I could find it. I should have saved it. It was on LinkedIn. Basically, it was a chart of the federal funds rate. And then basically every month, they would draw a line of what the forward interest rate curve said the federal funds rate was going to be. And basically what it showed was that the forward yield curve was not effective at predicting the federal funds rate at all. At all. It was actually quite funny to look at. It was like, wow. Like, we all say that the bond market is the smartest market. I mean, it's true, but it's not actually accurate at predicting interest rates. So here I'm coming in. The market thinks that rates are going to come back significantly here. And I just don't see how this is possible. Like, I think it was Morgan Stanley that said that Federal Reserve won't be able to cut in March, that they might have to wait until June. That's more in line with my thinking. But the flows just keep going in one way. It's pretty wild. I think I was getting sick, but what I just coughed up there was better than it was yesterday, so no big deal. I think ADHD just ends up being useful to talk about because, again, it's all about how do you train your mind to do this. I know a lot about it because of the ADHD, that's all. And so it just becomes a useful vehicle through which to discuss how a person goes about training their mind to be able to trade. So that's the whole thing, is everybody says, well, how do I trade? Right? And then you give them everything and then they don't get it, right? Well, it's because learning to trade is not something that is like you go and you read it and it's a step-by-step process and then you do it and you know how to trade. It's a lot more like, how do you play basketball, right? Well, you go and you play basketball and you learn to do it by playing it. And you have to practice. Do it day in, day out. Oh, that's fine. We had gone through all that thing. The thing that had gotten me into this is me being ADHD, was, oh, what is on my YouTube? Okay. I get a lot of StarCraft Brood War stuff now. I usually watch one a day. I actually really still enjoy watching Brood War. Maybe I should play it. Maybe I can play it over the Christmas holiday. So I bet if I started playing it, some of the kids might want to play it with me. I always get the boiler room. Some boiler rooms are like so dumb, but some of them are like, oh my gosh, this is so good. I get lots of music production stuff. Let's see here. I get woodworking stuff. I come in here and tell it to show me the woodworking. Ah, yeah, woodworking. Last minute architectural upgrades. Fancy, fancy. The tool that broke the woodworking. Oh, I have to watch that. Yeah. It's probably clickbait. Or maybe I shouldn't click that. So this is what I hate about YouTube. So like if we come in as stocks, I tell you what, I don't think I have ever, I hope that this YouTube channel is useful to you guys. I really do. I don't see this information being put out anywhere else in social media. It's all within academic studies and it stays within that world for some reason, okay? I don't think I've ever come on YouTube and seen a YouTube video that was beneficial. Like that I got something from. Americans are spending like there's no tomorrow. Yes, we already know that because we see those numbers come out every day. History is repeating. Okay, so this is the fallacious logic. Doesn't work like that. You can't just like overlay two charts and expect the chart to play this out the way that the other one does. That one always pisses me off. It's like Zero Hedge will say, hey, this market really looks a lot like this market. And then there's some move that they're expecting because of that chart and it doesn't happen. So then they come back a week later and they've like readjusted the charts to make it fit again. Ugh. That one drives me crazy. Why I stopped listening to finance influencers. Oh, look, they've got Graham Stephan in the background with evil orange eyes. Oh my gosh. Information here is great. You do a good job spraying the info sources, etc. Thank you. I mean, I was talking about this with my wife because she was giving me shit, man. I'm sure you all feel it. It was like, okay, well, if you're so good at trading, then why aren't you a millionaire? Because for a retail trader, being really good at trading probably means just breaking even. If you're a retail trader and you're doing really, really good at trading, you might be taking on excessive risk and are likely to like blow up soon. But when you consider who you're competing against, you know, so we need all the help that we can get. And one of the big advantages that we can have is collaborating with other people. The firms, they can only collaborate with the people at the firms. It looks like I'm onto something with my liquidity hole strat. I just have a hard time determining the length of it. That 45-minute rule gets violated all the time. Well, yes and no. So there's two ways that this kind of plays, right? One thing is, if it's a market that is very anxious about something, you know, like it's a trend day or whatever the deal is, they don't wait. It just keeps going, you know, and you will get pauses where like the market seems to be just like so constrained that they do let it come back, but then they only let it sit there for like 45 minutes and then it's off to the races again, right? And then you're constantly chasing it. That's like on a trend day. But the other thing is that, look, if every time the duration that they waited was exactly 45 minutes, that would be too easy, right? It would be too easy. So they play games with it, essentially. So I think of it more as like a 30-minute window around that 45 minutes, right? So it's either going to happen 30 minutes after the initial move, anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour after the initial move, somewhere within that time frame. And they have all these extra kind of little things. Like one of the things that they'll do is they'll like, okay, what kind of possible signal could you potentially get that would say we're going to get another leg here? And they do that on every kind of like 1 minute, 5 minute, 30-minute bar charts or whatever the deal is, right? And then their algorithm games out when would be the most unlikely time for a large meta order to start, and then that's when they start executing it, right? So I think the most important thing is don't get in when the liquidity hole is forming, right? Because that's a really big temptation, because it's often when the market is looking like the most bullish and you're really getting strong signals from the order flow and you want to get in, that the liquidity hole forms. Part of the reason why the liquidity hole forms is because you and everybody else wants to get in there, right? Then you can go, you know, okay, it's forming, so I'm not going to touch it for like 30 minutes, 45 minutes. I can kind of game it out based on what news are we going to get. By the way, do we have news at the top of the hour today? Do we have US leading index, but that's it. So maybe, well, I don't think that we're going to get one here in the treasuries. We don't have an auction or anything today, do we? No. 4-week bill auction. I'm not too sure I'm expecting another meta order in ZN, I guess. I think that we're well past the time where if they were going to make another, like, they would do it. So, and that's kind of the thing, is like, okay, so I know that I want to wait a certain amount of time. Then I'm going to get in, like, it will form a clear range, and then I can get in the lower end of that range if it lets me. Right? And then I might have to wait a while, but then the meta order comes, right? And if I've taken the trade and it's been like 30, 45 minutes, something like that, then it's probably just not happening and you can scratch it. This is the first time I've noticed that big order there at 113.020. And scanning around. Let's zoom out here on the dollar. Most likely 30 minutes for retail, no matter how long the hole actually lasts. If you're not done within the first 30 minutes, don't do it at all. Are the parameters for a liquidity hole rigid enough to code to paint that area on a chart? Well, so when a liquidity hole has formed, you can see it on a chart, but like That's kind of the whole thing is you want to identify it before you can see it on a chart, right? And I'm not so sure that I could program it. I think that it could be done. There's got to be a way to do it, but I don't know how I would go about doing it, to be honest with you. But this comes back to this issue, which is like, I can see what the latent liquidity is on the DOM. I can see that like they're not putting up very much liquidity, either bid or ask at this one particular spot, and it's just trading back and forth across it, and nobody ever wants to put any liquidity at risk. But how do I program that? I don't know how you do that. But the bigger thing is I don't know if programming them would really help you. Like, the whole thing is, you see the liquidity hole, like that's a great place to get out, a great place to not get in, you know, because you know that it's probably not going to go very far. Okay. Once the liquidity hole is formed, like after it's been 45 minutes, it doesn't matter anymore. So like if we go away from it, and you see that liquidity hole there, you know, all putting it on the chart is going to do is make you tempted to be like, oh, is it going to come back down to this spot? You know, I actually know that because the liquidity conditions are almost certainly different by that point. And that's kind of another key thing that I'm trying to get you to realize when I talk about liquidity holes and the amount of time that they take to heal, is to realize that there's really nothing within the liquidity that is going to make it lock back onto a certain price. Like all of these ideas about the previous day's point of control and stuff like that, all of the statistics that they're pulling out of that are just aberrations caused by volatility and have nothing to do with the volume profile or any of that. Say treasuries are in Grinch mode. They do seem pretty tight since that news. I gotta say though, Octavius, don't you feel like that the reaction to GDP and everything was a little bit stronger than anticipated? I guess for a third revision, it was a relatively big revision down, but still. Well, I bet you Zero Hedge is going to complain about the revisions. Let's go and read their story, huh? Oh no, crash of our lifetime. Okay. Turley Scottish should rule unanimously against Trump ballot ban. Yeah, probably. I think so too. Valley Fed flops. New orders plunge as prices paid jump. Yeah. Okay. They do have a story about it. Let's read first their thing about GDP. Okay. Normally, the market could care less about data that is at least 3 months old. Like, for example, today's third estimate of quarter 3 GDP for the quarter ended September 30th, or, well, 3 months ago. But on days like today, when algos are desperate for bad news to validate the Fed's dovish pivot and extend on pre-market gains, it appears that everyone ignored the very strong initial claims print, which came in near record lows. And instead, it focused exclusively on both the GDP number, which at 4.9% was revised sharply lower from the 5.2% reported in the second estimate, as well as the core PCE print, which at 2.0 was a big drop from the 2.3 previously expected, and right in line with the Fed's inflation target. According to BEA, the increase in third quarter primarily reflected increases in consumer spending and inventory investment. Imports, which are a subtraction in the calculation of GDP, increased. The update from the second estimate reflected downward revisions to consumer spending, inventory investment, and exports that were partially offset by upward revisions to state and local government business investment, housing investment, and federal government spending. There's a bunch of details. I'm going to skip reading all those numbers because it probably just, when you're hearing it, when you hear somebody on the internet reading it, probably just flies right through. You got to read that stuff yourself. Okay. Anyways, translation. 3 months ago, when the Fed was still pointing to more rate hikes in 2023, core PCE had already fallen to the Fed's target, and only the lack of accurate data is what apparently prevented the Fed from turning more dovish. Of course, the same lagged effect of accurate data is why the Fed's rate cuts will be coming just as inflation is once again starting to run away to the upside, guaranteeing a catastrophic repeat of 1970s Arthur Burns Fed. Okay, so that part is their opinion, but they did, I think, give a good explanation for why the market cares about this GDP print and everything so much, is that they're saying that that PCE inflation was actually already back to target 3 months ago. That's a really positive for the Fed being able to at least normalize rates. I do agree somewhat with zero hedges. I don't like the way that they talk about it. It's like, oh, it's certainly going to play out this way. Well, I don't know, but I am seeing a little bit of data that does make me concerned that inflation could come back. The jobs data is looking good, and we're also kind of seeing housing tick back up again. So I think that you might see further ticks up in inflation because of housing. Okay, so then they have another one. Markets go wild on 3-month-old revised data. Great news, America. Economic growth in the third quarter was not quite as hot as the government had previously guessed. Worse data suddenly supports the Goldilocks scenario, as the algos appear to completely ignore the initial claims data, which is practically at record lows. Stocks soared higher, treasury yields puked, gold spiked, and the dollar dumped. March rate cut odds jumped back above 80%. From 60? They were at close to 60 at one point. On the 15th, they were at 60. Oh dear, Mr. Powell, what have you done? I tend to agree. I still think, even with that GDP news and everything, that the market's exuberance is not justified. And I am concerned that come mid-January, that they're going to get a real wake-up call. Okay. After tumbling near 2023 lows in the prior peak, the number of Americans filing for jobless benefits rose from a revised 203K to 205K, basically at the year's low. California and Georgia saw the largest drop in initial claims, while Ohio saw the biggest increase. California's claims data has been anything but stable. Yeah, they've been big gains. Okay. Continuing claims were flat at 1.865. Does near record low initial jobless claims really fit with the Fed expecting to cut rates at least 3 times next year? I mean, I'm not going to argue with the flows today. One thing I would point out, when we come over to a chart here, that was a pretty wild fall yesterday, and as good as that data was, or as much as the market seems to like it, it's hardly even making a dent in what we lost yesterday. And it wouldn't surprise me to see some sort of a breach of 4780 followed by some more 0-day to expiration trades short that see the market actually end up down on the day again. Not saying it's a prediction, but it wouldn't surprise me. That's one scenario I potentially see. Okay, so that's all we got from Zero Hedge. I'm not going to read this. Economist claims 2024 will bring biggest crash of our lifetime. I'm not. That sounds that sounds fantastical. Okay, so we are going to get that, what was it? Leading index change. This is usually not a huge event. I'm not seeing any kind of change in the liquidity for it, but we'll see. You never know. Every once in a while, those low tier events, there's something in them really weird and so there's this story out there. When Xi was here in California, he straight up told Biden that China is going to take over Taiwan, but no idea when. Like, we already knew this. It doesn't surprise me that he says that. I find it interesting that that seems to be such a big headline because everybody's acting like they're shocked. Oh, see, they actually are going to do it. Yeah, because they've been saying that since forever. What? Donald Trump goes after Taylor Swift? Oh, I won't have to read about that, probably. I mean, not that I care about Taylor Swift, but that's big news, man. If he starts attacking Donald Trump versus Taylor Swift blood feud? Because normally, I don't know. That one's a little weird. Because, see, Donald Trump is pretty good at, like, when Eminem, for instance, wanted attention, he's like, oh, I'm not going to attack Eminem. He was like, I know that I wouldn't win in a brand battle of that. But that he wants to win in a brand battle with Taylor Swift seems a little bit, okay. This is from Newsweek. Despite receiving multiple criminal, of course they start with criminal indictments, Donald Trump thinks he should have been awarded Times Person of the Year. The magazine instead gave the honor to Taylor Swift for shooting art and commerce together to release an energy of historic force. But the former U.S. president does not agree with that decision and has shared an article that argues that he should have received the accolade. He's not actually attacking you clickbaited me, Newsweek. Curse you, Newsweek. Trump posted the DC Inquirer article to his Truth Social platform Tuesday. It is written by Reed Cooper, a diehard supporter of Trump. According to his bio, Cooper argued it was a mistake to give the award to the left-wing singer, and Trump was a more deserving recipient because he had been successful at quite literally everything he's tried throughout his life. Okay, well, pretty sure that he has been Times Person of the Year before, and I don't feel like that he really did anything that noteworthy. I do think that Taylor Swift is a little overhyped, but it does kind of seem like that her tour has been so popular that it had a measurable effect on the economy. So I think it's totally reasonable to make her Time Person of the Year. And Donald Trump saying that he should have received it is not necessarily him attacking Taylor Swift. So that was clickbait. That was hardcore clickbait. Does anybody on r/politics realize that this is clickbait? I'm going to bet no. Why is a 19-year-old the biggest diehard supporter of Trump? That is actually kind of funny. No. Well, if we go to controversial, maybe we'll get this. well, I'm not going to post anything about it, but I don't feel that reposting an article saying that he should have gotten the instead of Taylor Swift, I wouldn't necessarily call a direct attack on Taylor. Okay. Now the treasuries are doing something a little bit more interesting. And why? Why? Well, I can see that Bitcoin kind of took off and is coming all the way back down. There's maybe a little bit of a move in the yield curve, but not too significant. Nor am I really seeing anything in the dollar or the other currencies that kind of support this move. So the treasuries coming back down seems to be isolated to just the treasuries. Are they going to begin to test the downside of this now? That would be very interesting. I think that, well, how much do they have trapped long? Ooh, actually, they have about 10,000 contracts trapped. Maybe if we do, maybe we could have a push through the lows. That would be very interesting. Burned myself the other day and the scar is not healing very well. Probably going to have a huge scar there now. Didn't burn myself that bad. 26. So part of my problem is that it's already been a meta order short, right? They like plowed right through that cost basis though. Okay, so I tried to play with the market a little bit there with the one contract to see how they would react to it, and they immediately filled it, so I don't like that. If I don't see some more volume start to come in short here, I will probably cut this loose quickly. Okay, well, maybe it wasn't that bad. You were 55 in the queue and had a short as ZB at 14, so why didn't you market sell into 13? So, I'm going to share something. This is very speculative, okay? A theory of mine, okay? I think that it's better for you to use a market order if you're an informed trader. My understanding is that if you're an informed trader and you're trading a really big lot size, that they do about half of it with limit orders. But I think if you think it's going to go a certain direction, that you want to be a part of eating out the liquidity. You come in with a market order, you're pushing it your way. You're taking the liquidity out. And I know it's just one lot, but you're making it more likely for us to tick in your direction. So if I think I know something that's going to move the flow in a certain direction, I like to hit it with a market order. You will notice that I will hit into these as they are going a lot in the micros. Because the best scenario is, like, let's just say that you were going to set up a trade right here, because this is an interesting spot, right? I want to hit 24 with a market sell in the hopes that when they touch 23.5 that people start puking, right? So I want to take the liquidity just as it goes right there at 24 would probably have been a good one. Okay, so now if it's bad, I can scratch. If I have more contracts, I can hit 23.5, right? And it never goes against me. That is the best case scenario, is you catch the edge and it runs. One lot in ZV. Listen, every order has impact. Every order has impact. And yes, if you could like go back in a time machine, I think that you would find that the path of the market be slightly different with your one lot or without your one lot. It does make a difference. So I try and go with the market orders. And that's what, you know, the reason I kind of pose that question is if you really have something that predicts future orders, why aren't you using a market order for it? Why are you waiting in the queue in the hopes that you're going to get filled? Because if you're informed, that limit order is not going to get filled, right? Like, quite frankly, if I'm sitting there, this is just like with the trade that I just took, because the trade that I took, it was not a market order. I put a limit order out there thinking that if it's a buy, they're probably not going to hit it. And they immediately hit it. I immediately started questioning the trade, right? If I'm really informed and there really is like flow imminent, that limit order shouldn't get filled. So why aren't you using a market order in that situation? So very speculative, just my opinion, but something to think about. There was an iceberg and you tried to join it. But that also kind of means that you weren't necessarily expecting a flow to come in short immediately in that location, were you? Well, they did come back down through, busted through the news low, not the overnight session low. The overnight session low is more like 21, I think. Was it ever lower than that? No, 21. And then there's still a long ways to go before you get into like yesterday's prices. So in fact, 22.5 is just kind of like a support area from before the selling yesterday. So is the spread working against me here? It is, in fact. It's the yield curve is flattening, and so the 30-year is not coming down as much as I would like. But the 10-year came back down to those lows pretty easily, so we'll see if they decide to go a little bit further or not. I think that a break of the overnight session low would be interesting. I also still see a pretty decent amount of contracts long that are probably trapped. So I think there's still some potential for further stop runs, but we did get a little bit of a stop run when they beat out the low from just after the news. I'm kind of reluctant to speak too early, but this trade that I took here, I'm feeling pretty good. Like, it's kind of relaxing. I took it in. It just kind of went. It's not too stressful yet. But I'm also thinking about taking it off, so I would really like to see it go through 21, but I am seeing a little bit here that kind of suggests that they're going to pause a little bit. So interestingly enough, I don't know if this is a large meta order stopped and then we kind of settle in this liquidity hole area, because we've actually seen the cumulative delta rise through this area. So it actually looks to me more like that somebody is trying to catch the knife. Well, listen. If you're going to try and catch the knife, I have some advice for you. Try and grab the handle, not the sharp part. Do you like that one? If you're going to catch knives, try to grab the handle. Use gloves. The CB's not cooperating here. Can't even get 10 now. Could have gotten 15 at one point. Well, the S&P 500 did turn negative and retraced the move there eventually. I don't know about this, guys. Where is that? They actually, like the initial downside, not too big of a deal. Then once it started going, you saw pretty much everything shift and the dollar move. So I'm thinking that this extension probably is the dollar, and in order for the treasuries to go and push new lows, that we might need the dollar to push higher. You think a new liquid hole might be forming right now? Well, so that move was so fast that you do kind of have a little bit of a vacuum probably going all the way back up to here to 113, right? That's why it will have a little bit of a tendency to kind of flow back into it. If there's anywhere that's likely to be a hole, it would be at 24, but we're not there at this time, so we'll see. There's probably a bit of volatility. It's probably gonna, you know, tick around here a bit first. Oh, that was interesting. They tried to take them at 24.5, and then they hit back and twice as hard and made them tick up at 25. Well, and I am hearing some big orders come in, like bids stacking and pulling. I'm kind of thinking if I wanted the quick trade, like to just make 15 bucks, I missed it, right? Now we may have to, if we want this to go further, we may have to sit through something. I do think that I have a good enough spot that I might be able to try and do that, though. But it seems that because the 30-year at the position that I'm getting, it's not very good. Darn. In fact, I should probably just... Oh, that's not good. That's not good. Okay. I scratched it -1. I don't like the flow this counterflow that's coming through. So let me put this a different way. What I'm looking at right now is I'm concerned about a inverse sine law taking effect here. Which is to say that the liquidity through all the way through here The liquidity, probably at least to here, if not to here, is pretty damaged, which makes it easier for it to come back to that location. And meanwhile, you are seeing somebody push back against it. So if we are getting a meta order the other way of equal size or greater, it would be able to retrace that whole thing. It actually looks like what's happening is that there's a seller. That seller may not actually be completely done, but they're being canceled out by an even more aggressive buyer. So in that situation, when it did this, that would have been the best time for me to get out. I could have gotten out. I mean, there was times for me to click, but I just wasn't fast enough in that location. I was more interested in them going to 21, and I kind of missed this. The mistake I made was when I saw that, I should have just gotten out at plus 10. But I didn't, so it retraced. But it's okay because it's not turning into a loser because I was able to recognize that it was the inverse sine law that was screwing me over there. So I guess, you know, I did the best that I could in that situation, and it was okay. I mean, I did get a lot of favorable excursion on that, even though I wasn't able to make money from it, so. But there was something, you know, like the way that I got filled, I really just didn't like the way that I got filled on that. Talk more about the inverse sine law. Okay, so. The more liquidity that there is, the harder it is to move, right? A liquidity hole is a kind of an odd situation, though, where there's no liquidity at this spot, but there's a lot of liquidity at the spots above and below it. And so they just trade back and forth across that area where there's no liquidity. It just settles right in there, which kind of sucks, but that's what happens, right? Okay. When we're getting a strong move down, okay, especially when it gaps, especially when it's like, it's kind of, and then, right? Okay, that whole thing is, you know, basically what happened is the robots all kind of panicked and pulled their orders through that area, and then the market orders just swept through it, right? So that means that it's easier to transverse that area. Basically, there's less liquidity through that whole area. It makes it easier to go through. So if you have one order that pushes, let's say that X is time and Y. So let me know. This is I have to write. I need to pull the little pad down here. Okay. So if we have, this is time and this is impact. Okay. So we're going to have a meta order, and let's say that this is 0, okay? So above this will be buying and below this will be selling, okay? So this first move, right, it has a certain impact. And there's a period through here where their impact is almost linear, right? To really move in the market, okay? But then you get another order that's just as big. Because the liquidity is lighter on this second one, it's actually going to move it more. Right? So basically, a large meta order comes in and a large meta order comes in and retraces the meta order before it. And that meta order comes in before the liquidity hole like really starts to form, right? That's kind of like the best situation for it. So, it's kind of a hard thing to describe because like I have to use all of these weird esoteric terms to describe it, right? If a meta order follows another meta order of the opposite sign, the following meta order will have more impact. That's the inverse sine law. Okay. So you can do some funky, if you were like a big trader, you can do some funky stuff with this, right? Okay. Like let's say that you are a hedge fund and you really want the market to follow this trade. Like, you really want to move the market. You think if I can get it above this certain level, it will trigger like all of this options, gamma hedging, and this and that. And I really want to hit it in that spot, right? Well, what you could do then, if I were to come in and just buy it, right, I'm going to have impact like this, and then the impact is going to settle and it's going to go yay far. But if instead I came in and I sold it first, and then just before the post meta order impact area comes in, I come back and I buy it, I will actually push it further and I will get the market further than I would have if I had just bought it. Right? This is why, again, we're saying you can't make money just from your impact necessarily, because if you sell something and then immediately buy it, the result will be a loss, essentially. It will move further on your buy, and so you'll have lost money on your sell. Right? You sold, but then your buy will end up being at a higher price, and you lost money. Okay, but I already like own a ton or something like that, right? And I really want to move it. I can kind of pull this kind of thing. All these people, they get faked out, and it pushes the market higher, and I get through my area, right? Okay. Now, selling it and immediately buying it afterwards is kind of risky. There's a couple of things involved in that you might not necessarily like, yada, 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 yada. But there's another way of doing this, which is, hey, if I really want to go long, I can just wait for a large meta order going the other way, let me get filled by them, and then push it back the other way. Like, let's say that this other guy, he's going to sell 20,000 contracts and I want to buy 40,000 contracts. So I let them sell 10,000 contracts. They start to get the impact. Then I start pushing the other way. 10,000 of those contracts come in. So now I'm filled 20. And then I push it the other way. My other 20, or maybe it's just 20,000 contracts that I'm going to trade after that, pushes it higher. So now I've made money on the contracts that I got filled down at the bottom. So that allows me to keep my cost basis a little bit lower, but still push price my way. Of course, for me to make money, I probably still need to have people to buy after that. Right? But that's probably what's going on here. Okay, so how do you make money with a market-making style factoring in this inverse sine law? Okay, so there's two ways that we as retail traders can utilize the inverse sine law. Okay. The first thing is what I just did there, which is if I've caught a winner, I can see the liquidity hole forming, but as I see the liquidity hole forming, I am actually seeing aggressive flow pushing the other direction. I want to take profits then and there. I saw it too late. I ignored it, but you're going to have to scratch it if you don't catch it down there. Okay, because it's going to come back, right? So that's the first thing. If you're in a winner, watch out for that counterflow, because if you get that counterflow just after a trend, that's what leads to those V-shaped reversals, right? The second one would be if you have a reason to believe that a counterflow is going to come in, those are going to be your best trades. So if we're selling, like, I think that the best scenario for this sort of a thing is like, we have a piece of news that comes out and it's a negative for the market. So the market sells off of that. And then immediately, right when the liquidity hole starts to form, then you see something on the news squawk that says something completely different, that is really, really positive, or that just completely contradicts what the piece of economic news that we got was, or whatever it is. And so now you think that all of that flow is reverse, right? Those are going to be your best trades. Those are going to move further because of the inverse sine law. So you got to watch out for those. But it's hard because it happens fast, right? But, you know, the inverse sine law kind of explains why you know, it always feels like whenever you've got a good trade, it comes back on you. It's because there's these guys, if it's a two-way market, there's these guys that are just waiting for a sell to come in so that they can buy it, right? There's these momentum traders and everything that are long the treasuries for whatever reason. They've been waiting for the opportunity where the treasuries turns into kind of a sell that so that they can reverse it and buy it back up. And that's what happened. But you have to know that they're there to really make money on that one, but sometimes you can. I guess I should have expected it in this situation. I got a little bit too excited about the possibility of them breaching 21, didn't I? Always gets me excited when we get moves like that. Those are the funnest ones. I've been seeing Nassim Taleb say things lately that are kind of he's starting to get more and more into Israel is doing awful things. I find this very interesting. Like, why do people not see the difference between a government doing what it can to try and minimize damage and only go after terrorists, with the understanding that some of their soldiers will do things that are illegal, mistakes will be made, etc., 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 versus an organization that is just out there to create as much carnage among the civilian population to scare them as possible? Why do people on the left ignore this? I don't get it. Could we use cumulative delta autocorrelation if the reverse leg is longer than going in that direction after seeing CD autocorrelation could still be very profitable? So the problem with the autocorrelation is that it's lagged, right? And it's going to be the place where that lag is going to hurt you the most is in the case of a V-shaped reversal like we just saw, right? Regressive tolerance. It doesn't make sense to me. I can only assume that Nassim is going in that direction because of his political biases, but well, yeah, but what you're gonna see is where's my mouse? So we have a move down like this, right? And what you're gonna see in cumulative deltas, you're gonna see it comes down, and then well, let me draw it a little bit better. It comes down, post meta order impact area shows up, and then it reverses, right? What you're going to see in cumulative delta is, oh, there's actually buying in here, right? You'll see it before it starts to have the impact, right? You'll see them going on the outside. Okay, so this is what cumulative delta is. What are you going to see in... and let's just say that this is like this, okay? What are you going to see in autocorrelation? You're going to see it's going to start at 0. It's going to go up. It's going to get up to a certain amount, right? It's going to get above 80%. And then as it starts to reverse, the autocorrelation is going to come down before reversing and going back up again. So by the time that you start to see autocorrelation come to an 80% point where it says there is autocorrelation in order flow, that particular flow might already be done. The place where, so I have some algorithms that they look for autocorrelation in order flow and then they get in. But the reason that those algorithms seem to work so well is because they catch the trend days, right? When it's reversals like that, by the time you're getting in, the move's already done. You got an aggressive seller at 26.5. Well, one thing that I am seeing. Okay, so we got the pullback. It's funny because I'm pretty sure that I got in like here. Whatever. What was actually, let's look at it real quick. Where is it? Did I close it? Oh my gosh. It'll probably like pop out somewhere else later. Okay. Positions. That was 875. Now we're at 865, so yeah, that's kind of weird. I got in here. I should still be a little bit profitable, but the yield's actually kind of shifted, so the yield curve did not move in a way that was conducive to my trade, was it? Okay, but anyways, okay, so here I can see the pushback, right? But now we're flat and I'm still seeing selling, so kind of looks to me like the meta order sell never stopped. Just got canceled out temporarily by the big guy. How big that one's going to be, I don't know. So could we see another run at the lows? It's entirely possible. I think that we'd have to continue to be on our toes. I don't think that I'm going to be around to see it because we only got 25 minutes left. Unless you guys want to stay, I can stay on today because I'm on vacation now. But I think that I am going to take my quick break and then I am going to study for the Series 3 until lunch, probably. And then I'll probably install Kubernetes. Actually, I should do some planning right now. Let's see. Might need to bring my big board over here. I kind of already got that. So Series 3 is the first thing. And I can just put it on here. And maybe move some of these to the big board. I don't know what I want to do with that piece of paper. Okay. No, I changed the colors between these two boards too. That's not no good. I have a bunch of things on here that I forgot about. So one of the things was Looking at Durbin and Watson, these two kind of indicators. Co-integration with the past on a first derivative. The chair video. The chair video probably comes first. This bit right here, I have like this, I don't know what to do. I need more room. So these long-term reminders ones, I'm just going to have to find a different method to do that. Maybe I can just find a piece of Velcro that I can attach to the bottom of the monitors, and that will help me remember those better. By the way, a task for you guys. Books dealing with CTA strategies and momentum. Would appreciate it if you have any recommendations. That's one of my tasks for this weekend. There was also this basis estimate thing. We should get into that. We can get into that if we get Akshay in. Anyway, by the way, we won't be streaming next week. I take that week off. There's no reason to trade, so I'll be studying that all that week. Okay. Well, they did turn down a little bit there, didn't they? Are still not even back to where I got in, though. That's very curious. Very curious. So the spread really flattened there, huh? Flattened after I got in, and that's what got screwed. But I would have done pretty okay if I had taken it in the 5-year or the 2-year. Well, I'm not going to try it right now because the last thing I'd want to do is get in a position right now. But I kind of wonder if I put a bid at 4.275 in the 2-year, if the market would react to that. What would it do there? You know, like right here. Coinbase secures crypto license in France, pushing deeper in Europe amid rift with the SEC, says CNBC. Okay, well, it's kind of starting to look more and more likely that the ETF approval is going to happen. SEC is fearing malfeasance, demanding cash be used in ETF purchases and not Bitcoin. Big money management firms are now growing confident that the Securities and Exchange Commission will make crypto history early in January by approving the first spot Bitcoin exchange-traded funds, Fox Business has learned. I saw this thing the other day. Somebody saying, like, we feel like the crypto rally has kind of gone a little too far, and we're concerned that an ETF would be like a sell the news kind of event. I don't think so. I think that when you get an ETF, that it's just going to go bonkers. And that you could possibly get an entire run that just goes over 100,000. After that, though, then it's like, okay, but what about Tether and all that? So once you have an ETF and then other institutions and companies are starting to buy that ETF, like, you have a real problem. Oh, gee whiz, I sent you something on Discord, and I'm not going to show you the picture, but it has a picture of Taylor Swift kind of dressed up in a Marilyn Monroe-like outfit. Is that what the picture that they used for her on the Time Magazine of the Year? And then it's got Joe Biden behind her sniffing her armpit. That's hilarious, dude. You should post. I would post that one in the memes channel on Discord. Ew, that's gross. So this is this picture of like a smooth brain versus a not smooth brain, and both images are a little disgusting. They're like little teeny tiny brains. What? Oh, this is satire. The latest from The Onion, Disney Plus debuts new Star Wars show about Yoda battling testicular cancer. That's so wrong. Freaking Onion. Newsweek says young Americans turn against boomers over Social Security. Let's read this real quick and then we gotta go. Younger generations in the U.S., including millennials and Gen Zers, are much more likely to believe that Social Security needs reforming than those in their 60s and 70s, according to a recent survey. Well, it does. Something needs reforming because it will be insolvent otherwise. Majority of Americans strongly agreed that the Social Security system needs to be reformed, according to Redfield and Wilton. Some 40% believe that Social Security currently pays out more to retirees, and I don't think that that's true yet, but it is on track to do that. This is in a subreddit I've never heard of before, though. Okay, back to 25. So if I was still in, I'd be up 5 now. It could be, I'm not going to trade it, but it could be possible that they go for those lows again. I mean, I think that would be interesting. I'm a little skeptical that it will do it, but it sounds like the funnest thing that could happen right now, so... Yep. I will see you next year, Jiwi. Just to reiterate, we'll be here tomorrow. Oh, I guess we'll see you next year or tomorrow. But after tomorrow, then the whole next week we will be gone. And I will have a video to write and record and a bunch of studying to do. Oof, there's a good take at 24.5 with only 464 contracts to do it. There's no way for me to still be in this. I would have had to have held through 10 ticks adverse excursion, which I really don't like. I could have gotten back in again, but hey, let's see if it goes. I'm really interested to see if this goes how far they would make it on the downside, because this rally in treasuries has been too much. So when there's finally maybe a little shift in momentum, how much does it dislodge people? That's what I want to know. Hamas said to reject Israeli offer for a 7-day truce in Gaza for the release of 40 hostages. I don't think those 40 hostages are ever going to be released, will they? People who wake up at 5 a.m. daily, why? Well, because the market. There's another ticket, 24, but I am seeing the pushback against it again. This could be interesting, guys. This could be interesting. I guess we'll see here. Jeez. My job is an hour away and I still need about an hour to cry in the shower. It's so sad. Do you think I'm... Pretty much everybody in this thread is like for work, you know? Like, because they have to. I think I'm going to reset it there at 24.5 again. They kind of took a look at it, but they haven't been able to get the flows to come through at 23.5 and so forth. And there does appear to be a little bit of pushback. If not some outright spreading behavior going on with the yield curve continuing to flatten a little bit. ZF is selling and ZB is buying. Yeah, we'll be here tomorrow for Friday. We got that PCE number. This is going to be a big deal. I mean, man. If, what is it exactly? Let's come and look at that real quick. So today, we got, oh, they don't even have it listed in here. Okay, but tomorrow we get core PCE price index month over month. So if that was spot 2 and the year over year was like 2%, I think that the market would really like that. We also got personal income, personal spending, and consumer sentiment. So there's actually a lot of important news tomorrow. What color works the best over here? Red? Black? Black? Not really a color that works really well for both light and dark background. Unfortunately, to highlight where my mouse is. Probably just stick with yellow. Anyways, lots of news tomorrow. We'll be here. And I mean, I could, if we had something, I could continue to stream here, but it would probably just be me programming and it would be really boring and distracting. So I will stop streaming and do my stuff. Oh, we're going to get some stuff from ECB's lane here as well. Oh, you guys might still have some fun left today. It's, you know, I wasn't able to get a whole lot out of it, but I would say that the activity has pleasantly surprised me this week. And I'd say, like, the movement that we got today was pretty good. It didn't work out for me, but I really liked that trade. I really liked that trade. I think I got a little too comfortable in it. You know, it was right when I was like, you know, this is kind of pleasant. I'm liking this. Is moving up and yada, yada, yada. So like immediately it flipped back down. Like, Seth's happy about a winner. We can't have that. By the way, as we're kind of like heading back down, snipping at the lows, the Japanese yen is rising again. So there's been a disconnect between the treasuries and the Japanese yen that is very curious. Could it be that the Japanese are once again selling treasuries and buying yen? What's with that? I ask about that in Discord, see what people think. I'm kind of wondering if this is like the hedge funds and everything are buying and all of the countries are selling treasuries. It's shifting from foreign holders being the largest holders of treasuries to more domestic holders. It's just that divergence there. It really sticks out to me. All right. Well, anyways, I am going to get going. So I'll see you tomorrow. In the meantime, stay